Hey everybody, Jim Ingersoll here, hanging out with my buddy Daniil Kleyman. We've got an incredible show for you today. Thanks for tuning in to our podcast, and thanks for everybody that's been liking, sharing, commenting, tagging people on all of our podcasts, the reviews and stuff like that. You guys are all awesome. Greatly appreciate it. The messages, texts, all that good stuff that's been coming in. We've got a great show for you today that is going to absolutely probably change your life in a lot of ways if you really take what we're going to talk about and implement. And it's not hard. Anybody can do this. You don't have to have an advanced degree. You don't have to have a lot of money to get started. And we're going to talk about becoming financially unstoppable. Daniil Kleyman calls it his FU wall. And for censoring issues, I'm going to call it financially unstoppable or being completely financially untouchable. And you're going to absolutely love this because we're going to talk about what they don't teach us in schools and what you need to do so you can live life on your own terms and be able to carve out the path for your entire life any way you want. Now, my guest today is Daniil Kleyman. Of course, he's the founder and developer of Rehabvaluator, but he's also an intense investor, and he operates really exclusively in the cash flow quadrant in the BNI quadrants, which is where we all need to get. So he's already there. So we're going to learn a lot about operating both the business and then operating as an investor. And those are the quadrants you really want to be in. If you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad or the cash flow quadrant, then you guys are in tune with what I'm talking about. It's also been my partner for several years. We started back with Bank Elimination Blueprint a good while back, and now we operate in Rehabvaluator Inner Circle. And we'll give you all the links below on all of that as well. Not only that, but he's got a great wife, Dinah, and two amazing children now, which is mind-blowing still for me, Daniil. And
for me too.
And we're both here in Richmond, Virginia. I've known Daniil really a long time, probably one of the oldest relationships I have in real estate because we met when I was back wholesaling, doing these investor bus tours. We'd load 50, 60 people onto a bus and go house to house, and met a lot of great people doing that. And so you're going to absolutely love getting it. Here's the other thing about Daniil. I will tell you, he is one of the hardest working people I've ever met. And a really great characteristic, honestly, Daniil, is you're probably one of the most honest people I've ever worked with. I truly believe if I was visiting your house there in Westham today, I could put money on your kitchen table, come back next week. It'll still be there. Not only that, it'll probably...
My 2-year-old might take it now, so.
Yeah. Honestly, no, it's been a pleasure being your partner, and you are absolutely one of the hardest working guys I've ever met, extremely focused and super honest. And those are all great characteristics for investors. So thanks for being on with me today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your compliments. And I appreciate you having me on. I'm surprised we haven't done it yet. So haven't done your podcast yet.
And waiting. And now my show's growing a bit lately, and I don't want to waste your time because I know it's really valuable too. So I do apologize for not getting you on sooner, but it's going to be really good. Let me give a quick snapshot to your FU wall, financially unstoppable, totally untouchable. Here's some of the things you said in that amazing article, which I'm going to link below. You say we should be offended by schools that give us 16 years and teach us no financial responsibility. They teach us to be wage slaves to corporate America. It's a system where you come out and you've got to work your 40 to 60 hours a week, if you're lucky, and only work one job. It's a government that takes 40, 50% out of your wages. We should be tired of financial advisors who only teach you to invest in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and all the real estate gurus who tell you you can be financial freedom with wholesaling and flipping. You can't. All of that is just it. And if you want to be able to carve out your own path for your life, and you want to be able to not worry about medical bills and tuition, a spouse or yourself losing a job, or braces for your kids, or you said if Johnny has to go to rehab, then you're set. So that is where we're heading today. And if you like all of that and you want to carve out your path, you're going to love the show today.
Hopefully Johnny never has to go to rehab, but
it happens too often, doesn't it?
It's expensive. Yeah.
So you've got an amazing education and a great entrepreneurial journey, but really it started when you showed up here with your family. And I've had the pleasure of meeting your parents and everybody. Like, when did you arrive here from Russia?
We came in 92. So I was 11 and a half, almost 12 years old at that time. So now everybody knows my age, and I'm dating myself. But yeah, we came in 92. That was during a time of kind of mass immigration from the former Soviet Union. Most of the people that were immigrating were Jews, and um, half of my family ended up immigrating to Israel. Half of my family, my dad's side of the family, went to Israel. My mom's side of the family, my family came here. And in hindsight, we've been to Israel many times. It's an amazing country, but I'm certainly glad we came here because I'll keep saying it till I'm blue in the face. It's whatever faults we have in America, we're still it's absolute best place to live, to
Yep, it's an amazing land of
build a
opportunity.
business, to do what you want, as long as what you're doing is within the limits of the law. You can do whatever the hell you want. It's I wouldn't live anywhere else. Not that I wouldn't live for a short period of time somewhere else. If we're definitely planning, and we can talk about sort of the benefits of having the FU wall, right? But we're planning to live abroad for periods of 6 months to a year when my kids are a little bit older, because we want to expose them to different cultures and languages and opportunities. So we have plans to go live abroad in multiple places, but permanently I would never reside anywhere but here.
How was it when you first got here? You're 11 and a half years old. You get off the plane, and were you in Richmond? I mean, what was it like arriving here at that age?
Big culture shock.
I'm sure.
Certainly a very big culture shock. We came from a big city. We lived in Moscow. We came from a city, I don't know, 10, 12 million people.
Wow.
Moved to suburbia in Richmond, Virginia. But it's not just, it's not just the geographic culture shock. It's people, it's attitudes. People all of a sudden were friendly, and strangers, you'd walk down the street and strangers would say hi to you, which in Russia is it's unheard of. I mean, people think you're crazy. Like you don't say hi to random people you don't know on the street. You don't smile at random people. So little things like that, to somebody that's brand new here, that even now was a big culture shock. Um,
Did you know English before you got here?
we I studied English, and my
Oh,
parents studied English, and so we came here with a foundation of the language. But you learn a lot more. You learn far better when you can immerse yourself in the culture, in the language. So we learned English far faster once we moved here.
I know
And
you're super smart, and I'm giving you lots of compliments. So I know that because you went. Listen, I know because you went to the governor's school, and then you went to the amazing UVA, University of Virginia.
they just needed another Russian. It was just a quota thing. It's not.
You're being a nice guy. Um, so you did that. You went to the governor's school here in Richmond. Then you went to UVA. And what did you take at UVA again?
My undergraduate major was commerce, so business.
That worked out, didn't it?
It did, yeah. I think so. Time will tell.
So then you got out of UVA and you went to Manhattan and worked on Wall Street for a while.
Correct. Yeah, I went and worked on Wall Street for about 6 years. I worked for a bunch of different banks, mostly in bond trading and bond structuring.
What was it
So
like living in Manhattan for 6 years? I mean, that's a pretty fast-paced environment there, and
yeah.
people aren't always friendly there either, by the way.
No, no, but for somebody in their early 20s, it's a great place to live. My life was very different back then. I worked 80, 90 hours a week, and then the rest of the time I partied, and I was a single guy in my early 20s living in New York. And so during that stage of my life, it was a great place to be. I made decent money for a young guy in his 20s. I then blew it all every single weekend, and then went back to work, slaved away at my corporate job, came home, partied every weekend. And so, but after 6 years, you wake up and you realize that while I've gained some pretty good experience, I really haven't built anything, right? I haven't actually built anything for myself. I haven't saved anything for myself. My big thing was, even early on, was like, not necessarily legacy, right? But like, what impact am I making in the world, right? What impact am I making in the world? Am I just a consumer that just keeps buying stuff? And very quickly I realized that I wanted to stop being just a consumer of stuff. I wanted to become a maker, right? I wanted to become a producer of something valuable in the world that was contributing and helping people. And at the end of the day, like the people that make real money, people that really grow wealth, they're not the consumers, they're the makers, they're the sellers, they're producers. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I spent, and Wall Street was a great experience, but we were just shuffling money around. Like I wouldn't say anything negative about Wall Street. It has its place in society, but everything we were doing was, bonds, they really just exist in the computer and in people's heads, and you can't touch them, you can't feel it, you can't see the impact that they're making on the world. Whereas real estate, I had a very early interest in real estate. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can go into a house, you can renovate that house, you can see the difference on the block that it makes, right? Family moves in there, you can see you've now impacted how generations of people are going to live for the next 50, 60 years. Something as small as renovating one house, you feel like you're making an impact on the community, on the world. And it's very different. When I was working on Wall Street, we worked with multi-billion-dollar transactions, which sounds impressive, but it didn't really mean anything because, again, we were just shuffling money around from one place to the next. We weren't really creating anything, especially anything of very much value. Whereas in real estate, you don't have to do billion-dollar transactions. You can go buy a $20,000 home and renovate it, and you've just made a big impact on a bunch of people. You've created a bunch of jobs. You've just, again, allowed somebody to have a great place to live.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to, it can be small numbers, small deals.
Sure.
You can still make a big impact.
So when you left Wall Street and then you came back to Richmond, how did your journey lead you from Wall Street into real estate? Like, where did you start to hear about real estate and what some of the opportunities are way back then?
Sure. I had an interest in real estate almost back in college. I just didn't really quite know how to make my way into it. So even while I was working in New York, I was kind of shopping around for some jobs with some big real estate firms in New York. Never really materialized, but it's almost cliche, right? Like, but the big thing about real estate clicked for me when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
I remember I was in a train back home. I was taking an Amtrak from New York back home for some holiday, and I just came off working like 80, 90-hour week.
Wow.
And I was beat. I was just beat to shit, basically. I always ask this when I do podcasts, but like, can I cuss or are we going to offend a bunch of people?
Well, you won't offend people. I don't think it'll get censored, so I think you're okay this deep in.
All right. Well, I won't. All right. I'll behave myself. I was just exhausted, right? And I was burned out. I was stressed out. I was dealing with a lot of corporate bullshit, right? Politics. You want to make it in the big firm, you've got to play the politics game. You've got to rise the corporate ladder. You've got to schmooze with the right people. And like, that's never been me, right? I've never liked schmoozing, networking, small talk, meetings, sucking up to bosses. It was just never me, right? I think it's primarily because, like, I think as a Russian immigrant, a lot of us have sort of this deep distrust of the system and of hierarchy, and it's a whole separate psychological thing that I won't go into.
I'm sure. So you read Rich Dad Poor Dad while you're on the train.
So I'm on the train, I'm reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and the message is so simple, right? Like the people that truly get wealthy in this world, and they don't do it by working a job. They just simply don't. Unless you're a CEO of a major Fortune 500 company with a multi-million-dollar compensation package and stock options to the moon, you're just not going to get wealthy, right? The people that truly get wealthy are those that own assets and build businesses and basically create an infrastructure where assets and people and businesses will work for them while they sleep, right? Or while they take vacations. So that really clicked for me. Like, that was a big light bulb in my head. I was like, I should just start buying real estate. Even if I don't quit my job, even if I keep working here, I should start buying assets that will eventually allow me to replace my income. And it seems like a no-brainer, but so few people do it.
And that's a great book. I've read all of Robert Kiyosaki's books. I just hooked on it since that day. I just finished reading Fake. which ties into some of what you were talking about with your list of stuff as far as schools not teaching financial responsibilities and all that. All that's in there, so it was interesting. But it's a great book. So then you're like, okay, so you want to do this. How did you start to figure out how to do your first deal?
So I started looking around New York City for things to buy, and Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn, Jersey. And this was 2006, 2007. The market was really almost near the peak.
Yeah.
And there was nothing to buy. I mean, it was just a joke, right? I mean, there's just nothing to buy locally. But I had a buddy that was buying and renovating houses in Richmond. And I ended up partnering with him, and we bought a couple of duplexes in the fan, like you and I just talked about before we started recording. Bought a duplex in Jackson Ward. And so even while I was still working in New York, I was working my full-time job. I had a couple of rental properties that were in hindsight, we didn't buy them. We've never bought those properties, but at that point, I just wanted to get in the game, right? Yeah. I just wanted to get in the game. I wanted to buy something. So we bought some properties. Luckily, we bought them in a good location. So even when the market crashed, rents stayed stable and occupancy stayed stable. And we weathered the crash and ended up selling all of these properties probably 9 years later. And we bought them at the peak. I mean, we just paid market value, bought them at the peak of the market, and we still end up selling them for like a 30% premium.
That's pretty good.
In 9 years, which kind of taught me that, like, if you can just weather the storm, eventually time will save you, right?
And I agree with that. I mean, I bought stuff in Petersburg near the top of the market that I really regretted, but I've been able to sell it this year.
Nice.
So time like cures problems in real estate because you're paying amortization down, so your loan balance drops, and eventually the market goes up, and you get rid of the stuff you don't want.
And the other thing that helps you is if rents just grow with inflation, even if your expenses, and this is something that I taught in one of the videos that I recorded a couple of months ago, even if your rents just grow with inflation, let's say 2%, and your expenses. Now, in an ideal world, your rents grow faster than expenses.
Right.
And your cash flow grows, and just blows up, right? But even if your rents grow at the same rate as expenses, because your expenses is just a smaller number, your cash flow will still grow over time. And so your cash on cash return and your equity will grow, and your value of your building will grow. So time is, even if rents and expenses just grow with the rate of inflation, over time, owning property makes sense. Owning property, even if you overpay for it a little bit, if you can just weather the next 5-10 years, you win. Not to say you should overpay. I mean, the other big important lesson I learned with those first few purchases was we didn't pay attention to how much deferred maintenance there was in properties. We looked at what we were paying, ran a cash flow analysis, and said, okay, we have to put 20% down. These are going to be our monthly expenses. Here's our cash flow. Not bad, right? Duplex cash flow is $400 or $500 a month. Wonderful. But we didn't pay attention to what needed to be repaired. Even if things weren't currently broken, things were so deferred that they were going to break. So what ended up happening in actuality, whereas on paper it looked like we were going to make $500 a month off of this duplex, over that 8-9 years that I held those properties, every penny of my cash flow went back towards fixing things.
Yep.
Every penny. And so that taught me a very important lesson, right? One, I just won't buy occupied properties anymore. I just won't, because they will have problems that have been deferred, have been neglected. And my whole philosophy when I was still buying single family rentals, which I don't anymore, was I want to be able to get in there and do a full renovation.
I know one of your goals, if I remember right, is no maintenance for, is it 5 years or 10 years, whatever it is?
5 years is a good rule of thumb, right? So if I do a gut renovation to a property, I shouldn't have issues for 5 years. Now, that's not to say we won't have maintenance calls. Appliances break, unexpected things happen, but we have, on our new construction product and on our gut rehab product, we have almost no maintenance calls. Whereas every property that I've bought that has been occupied, that has had tenants in it, it seems easy, right? Because you're buying a cash flowing asset. You're buying something already with tenants. but you can't get in there and properly tackle everything that's been deferred. So you end up just piecemealing it over time. So that comes out of your cash flow. Whereas if you do that initially, you can refi out and get everything that you've just invested into renovations back, right? So it's a very different model.
So do you think, thinking through that, like those duplexes you bought and then the deferred maintenance and all that, did that, and that shaping how you look and analyze property, did that lead into the initial stages of developing Rehabvaluator?
Yeah, I developed Rehabvaluator really just for myself, right?
I remember.
My background is in building financial models, and I started my real estate business when I moved to Richmond. I started investing full time, and I just built simple spreadsheets for myself to evaluate deals, and eventually I gave them out to a couple of people, and I said, man, this is really cool. Here's some suggestions for making it better, and you should try selling this because a lot of people will benefit from it. And I said, well, selling it is cool, but how about I just give it away and create? So I created the free version of the software, and it went through all the spreadsheets. Now it's a full cloud-based platform with, we've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into building it out and still developing it. But yeah, the first version of it was really, I built it for myself. I needed a way to, I'm probably more analytical about things than an average investor. So I needed to build something that will allow me to make sure that I'm not overpaying for deals. Right.
I think I remember after our bus tours, we were doing like little lunch meetups, and I remember like going for barbecue or something. And I think I remember you talking about the early stages of Rehabvaluator. Do you think that's likely?
Possibly. That was a long time ago.
It was.
I think that was 2008 that we met.
Yeah.
On that bus tour. I mean, that was back when you were wholesaling like 200-300 deals a year.
Yeah, a lot.
I bet you don't miss those days.
I remember, like, we would go around the table, and I think Duke Dotson was there, and Ryan and yourself, and we were just talking about different things we're doing and how we look at deals and stuff. And I remember you sort of talking about that. So you started off, you developed it, you got it out there, and then people started suggesting you could sell it, you wanted to give it away. How did you figure out that you could scale that as a business? Like, when did that light bulb go off?
So it's funny, right? Because I mean, I don't mind being honest about it. I started that business and I tried to turn it into a business really almost as a hedge, right? It's funny. People will say, well, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Multiple sources of income, right? Yeah. Multiple sources of income. And if you have a core business that you're doing, investing in rentals, wholesaling houses, whatever that business, if you're making ice cream, you have a byproduct of that business that can be used to create another business. If you're wholesaling houses, people often say, well, if you're so busy wholesaling houses, why are you teaching others to wholesale houses? Why do you have courses if you're so successful? Multiple sources of income. That's average millionaire has 7 different sources of income, right? So I really initially turned it into a business almost as a hedge. Hey, if real estate doesn't work out, I'm going to have another source of income. Or if real estate slows down, I'm going to have another source of income. And I wanted to do it because it was a natural byproduct of my real estate business. Here I am doing deals. Here I am modifying the software. For the last 10 years, I've developed the software for my own business, right? Which makes it powerful because it's being built and refined by somebody that's actually doing deals and not by some programmer, right? So, but to answer your original question, I didn't know what the hell I was doing at first, right? I didn't know anything about internet marketing.
Right.
I didn't know anything about building websites. I didn't know anything about writing sales copy. I didn't know anything about, Google AdWords, Facebook, nothing, right? I jumped into it, and even though I'm over analytical when it comes to real estate deals, I'm not that analytical when it comes to like risk, right? So I'll just do something. I'm not going to think it to death. So I started the business. I had no idea what I was doing, and I just figured it out as I went. I watched YouTube videos. I bought courses. I listened to experts, and then I just tried a whole bunch of things, and slowly, organically, as more people started using the software, it grew into a real business, and we have tens of thousands of users right now.
And I think it's interesting because you said you wanted something lasting, like a legacy piece. You wanted to be able to help people. And then I think Rehabvaluator has done that. I mean, you've helped tens of thousands of people correctly analyze real estate deals. And you've also provided a tremendous amount of education for people. I've seen the testimonials, I know. So do you feel like satisfied, like that you've been able to sort of accomplish part of that initial mission that you had?
It's definitely allowed me to touch a lot of people, right?
Yes.
And it's not just about analyzing deals, right? I mean, the software does a lot more than that. It allows wholesalers to market their deals and get them sold, build buyers lists. It allows people raise funding for their deals. And there's a project management section now that allows you to really manage your rehabs and new builds start to finish. But because we've not just sold the software, we've given away hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies of the free version already. You know, I'd like to think that we've impacted a lot of people, maybe in a small way, maybe in a big way, but along with the software, we've also put out a lot of education. And yeah, I mean, that's the financial reward. It is definitely nice to be able to sort of touch the lives of that many investors. And I feel like we're just getting started, right? There's a lot more things that I want to do. But yeah, at the end of the day, I decided to make a switch between being somebody that just consumes things, right? To somebody that produces. And artists produce, business people, entrepreneurs produce. It's not just software creators, right? You produce education, you produce content. Instead of just taking things from the world, right? I wanted to start putting things out into the world.
And I think like keeping your focus on that while you're scaling your business has allowed you to really make a really big impact to a lot of people. You've been able to, through internet marketing and different things, like reach a ton of people. And I've seen the testimonials, you're very humble, but I know people's lives have really been radically changed due to the products you've created. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So going back to the financially unstoppable, untouchable. I mean,
that's one interpretation of that abbreviation.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm not going to get censored by iTunes, but okay. Anyways, do you think anybody could do this? I mean, I've met like a tow truck driver. I've met people with 8th grade educations, and I've also met people that are super brilliant and smart, like all spectrums, all generations, all cultures. I've seen people do really well with real estate, and I've also seen people struggle. But do you think that opportunity is there for anybody to build that FU wall?
Yeah, and you know, when you're talking about intelligence, I actually think like the smarter you are and the more degrees you have, the less likely you are to succeed at this, because you're just going to overthink and overanalyze this to death, right? You might be an exception because you have an engineering degree, or you have like an engineering PhD or something. Masters. That's right. But you know, I meet a lot of really smart, educated people, and sometimes they're not as successful as the guy that just says, "Screw it, I'm going for it."
Yeah.
And just like the most successful people that I see in this business are those that will listen to our podcast, hear me say something, some idea, and then tomorrow they're doing it. Maybe they don't know what they're doing. Maybe they don't have the right tools yet, the right knowledge, but they're doing it. And as they're doing it, they're figuring it out. Versus the person that's going to hear something we say on this podcast, maybe, hopefully we say something smart that inspires some action in somebody, but like they're going to listen to something we say, hear a concept or an idea, then they're going to research it for the next 6 months. And then while they're researching that for the next 6 months, they're going to listen to another podcast, hear another idea, get distracted by that, and now they're researching that for the next 6 months.
Right.
And then 2 years later, nothing's happened, right? So real estate is not a complicated business. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? It's simple, but not easy.
No, I saw something you posted a couple of weeks ago, and I agreed with it, which is something about like finding one thing and then going deep with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because as an entrepreneur, it's easy just to jump all over the place. Like I want to do a subject to, I want to learn about self-directed IRAs, I want to learn about lease options, wholesaling, fix and flips, rehabs, all these things. Whereas like if you just build a rental portfolio and just hang on to it for a long period of time, you will be financially unstoppable.
And you don't need much. Like you don't need a lot of units, right? Most people make, let's say you're somebody that makes $60,000, $70,000 a year. That's a pretty good income, right? Each house, let's say clean, will cash flow you. Let's say you can find houses that cash flow you $300 a month. That's very doable, right?
Absolutely.
So to replace a $70,000, let's say 60, let's make it simple. To replace a $60,000 a year income, you need pre-tax $5,000 a month salary. How many houses is that? Divide that by 300, right?
Not that many.
On an after-tax basis, it's about 10 houses. How hard is it over a couple of years? I know people that can do it in a month. You're buying like 10 houses a day. You're just ridiculous. I'm too lazy to be doing that.
Yeah, it isn't.
But like, how hard is it to buy in 3 years? And in 3 years, you've just completely replaced your income. So now those houses are just like you going to work every day, except for you don't have to go to work anymore. You can just sit on your couch and watch Days of Our Lives and eat Cheetos and just get fat and.
So in your article,
that's not what I'm advocating you do.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're physically fit and you're a go-getter. I know, but
how hard can it be to find 10 houses in 3 years, 4 years, right? So, like, what excuse do you have in 5 years for working your job? The only excuse you should have in 5 years for working your job is that you absolutely love what you do. In that case, God bless you, stay. We need people to work jobs. If everybody owned real estate and nobody worked, our society would collapse. So we need workers. But like in 5 years, if you're still going to a job you hate, what excuse do you have? Other than I absolutely love what I do, or I make $500,000 a year and it's hard to walk away from. So if you make $500,000 a year, you're going to have to buy a lot more houses.
Yes, you are. You're going to pay a lot in taxes. I mean, the government really taxes employees very highly. In the article you write about just focus on steady recurring income streams and then magical things happen and you will be financially unstoppable. How do you get over that hurdle of fear to buy your first one? You're just saying, just go do it. Learn some basic things. Buy, rent, rehab, refi, whatever it is, right? Put 20% down if you have to.
Put 20% down if you have to. Buy a house. And in that first house, you should manage. Even if you have a full-time job, manage that house. Learn the ins and outs of property management. Learn the ins and outs of rehabbing. Even if you have a full-time job, you can never, that doesn't mean you should be doing it long-term, but you can never manage tasks that you yourself don't know how to do. So down the road, you can outsource property management. Like we have an in-house property management company with a full-time employee, and we're going to probably hire a second one as our portfolio grows. But I don't manage properties anymore. My property manager does. But for the first 4 or 5 years, I was the property manager. And that's the only way I could then build a system and hire somebody and oversee them and train them properly. And now we have an incredibly tight property management practice. But do it yourself first on the first couple of houses. That doesn't mean you should be rehabbing yourself, right? But you should be learning the ins and outs of what needs work. How do I go into a property and figure out
what it needs
to be replaced, what needs to be redone, right? What are the demands of the rental market? What kind of finishes do they want to see? What do things cost? Go out and get some bids. It's not complicated. People email us all the time. They're like, will your software tell me what renovations will cost? No. No. It won't, because things change constantly, right?
The prices have gone up a lot in the last year.
You and I are in the same market.
Yep.
We can sit down and compare our notes about what our labor costs on different tasks.
It'll be different.
And it would be different.
Yep.
Because you may have better relationships than I do. You may be using slightly different materials. My supplier relationships might be better. Go and figure out what things cost for you, and constantly be working on updating those relationships and getting better pricing, right? It's a simple business, but it's not easy because people don't want to do the steps. People don't want to take the steps, but it's not complicated. Buy a house, put 20% down if you have to. Manage that first house yourself for a while. Learn how to lease, learn how to show property, learn how to screen tenants, learn how to draft leases, right? Learn how to deal with maintenance requests and get a good team of subcontractors that can go and tackle maintenance issues. It's not hard, and there's nothing to be afraid of. What you should be afraid of is slaving away at the job you hate for the next 30 years and being $400 away from a $400 emergency away from being on the street and not making your rent payment. That's what you should be afraid of. You should be afraid of dying, laying in your deathbed in 20, 30, 40 years and looking
I agree.
back on a life that you've lived with dreams, right? Just missed opportunities and lost dreams and places that you haven't traveled to, time that you didn't spend with your family because you were so busy working, sleepless nights that you've just stayed awake worrying how you're going to make mortgage payment next month, right? Dealing with raising a GoFundMe campaign because your car broke down. Like that's what you should be. That's what you should be afraid of. It's terrible.
It is.
I can't, like, I obviously get passionate when I talk about this, but
it's good.
The way most people live just baffles me. It baffles me. I don't get it. And that's not to say that, like, you know, I'm a billionaire, but like I will never have to work a job in my life again. Even if and here's the other thing, right, that you gain by learning these skill sets. Even if my entire real estate portfolio blows up, even if I go bankrupt, even if the absolute worst happens, something completely unforeseen, I've gained over the last 7-8 years varying skill sets that will allow me to rebuild. I'm still not going to work a job. I'm not going to go send my resume out. I will just start over and I will rebuild because I have the skill sets. What's in your head is the most important thing you will ever possess. And what's in your head gets developed two ways, by learning, but learning on its own is useless. It's a combination of learning and experience, right? So learning by doing. So go buy your first house, go buy your second house, make mistakes, lose a couple of bucks. You'll figure it out. The skill sets that you will gain, and in 3-4 years, the financial security that you will gain are amazing. And
yeah, the journey definitely changes you for sure. I'm 100% sure if I had to start over, it would be very fast to rebuild, because you become a different person over time with what you learn and who you're hanging out with, who you're associating with, and what rooms you're going to, and who you're networking with, and how you're learning. And your mindset is literally everything. So I really appreciate you saying that. It was very inspiring.
Yeah. Here's the other thing about rebuilding, right? And having that sort of resiliency mindset. You have to be chasing the right goals. So if you are chasing big houses and cars and fancy things and you lose that, it's very hard, right? If what you're chasing is the experience and the freedom and the skill set, you'll never lose the skill set. Freedom really can be regained, right? I just see a lot of people chase the wrong things, right? They're chasing the goals and they're chasing the wrong goals. So I think it's not hard. I think most people overcomplicate it, and most people never get started. And the hardest part is getting started. So find some way to get in the game. Find a partner, find an equity partner, find a private lender. If you've got some cash, put the money down in your first house, gain experience, figure out how valuations work, see if you can refinance after you've put tenants into it. There's a lot of different ways to get in the game.
And I love all that. And I think if you really just stay focused on creating that steady recurring income that comes in every month, like an oil well just pumping cash flow to you, you're going to be fine through all the different market cycles anyways. Well,
and here's the other, just to finish that thought, Jim.
Yeah.
The other, and you made a reference to when I said my blog post about magical things happening once that revenue comes in. The magical things happen from time freedom, right? Like imagine if you are somebody that's listening to this and you go and you work a job that you don't necessarily enjoy. Imagine what would happen if that income still came in every month, but now you had 40 hours, 50 hours a week free. What could you then accomplish, right? What could you then do with your time? What kind of business could you build? What kind of life could you build if all of a sudden you had an extra 40, 50 hours a week? That's when magical things happen. When you wake up on the Monday morning, you're like, what should I do with my day?
Right.
Let me go pick up a book. Let me go read something that interests me. Let me go work on my business. Let me go build relationships. That's when the snowball effect really takes place, right? The hardest part is the beginning. Once you can free yourself and now, other part of that is freedom, right? Freedom to make good long-term decisions. If you don't have to worry about paying your bills next month, if you don't have to worry about where that money will come from, you can now make long-term strategic decisions instead of making desperate short-term moves. That's where the magic happens, because now you can be strategic. You can be long-term. You can build your business the right way without having to do something that gets you money tomorrow that may be detrimental to your reputation. So.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I really appreciate your sharing, and it's been a pleasure to be your partner for the last several years. Everybody, you should check out rehabvaluator.com for sure. And then if you want to join the group Daniel and I have, go to rehabvaluator.com/inner-circle. Did I get that right?
Yep. rehabvaluator.com/inner-circle.
Like it.
Yeah, sorry, I get carried away when talking about this stuff.
It's good.
I feel strongly about it, but I mean, it absolutely boggles my mind to know how most of, forget the rest of the world, Americans have it far better than the rest of the world. But even Americans, look at how most Americans live. Right? I mean, what was that statistic? Like 60% of the people are $500 emergency away from being broke.
Yep. And I just saw one on net worth also, and it's a lot like the median net worth and how low it is for people at age 55 and 60. It's scary. So don't let that happen to you. There's no reason you should have a very low net worth when you're hitting up into retirement. Zero. There are no excuses. There are ways to do this without just earning a W-2 your whole life and pumping money into your 401k.
And that's, I mean, don't get me started on that. That's the other lie that everybody has been sold, right? That true. You can retire off of your 401k. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. Most 401k balances are well less than $250,000, $300,000. How many?
You should see the median I just saw. I mean, it's
what's the median?
It was like, say it was $100,000 at 55.
Okay. So, okay, $100,000 to 55. Once you start tapping that $100,000, how long can you live off of that?
Not long.
Even if you're very conservative with your expenses, how can you live?
Right.
That $100,000 will evaporate in 2 years. It's gone. What kind of retirement is that? That's why you walk into Walmart and see 80-year-old grandpas greeting you at the door. You know, they got no choice. It's sad.
It is. It is. So don't become one of those people. Become financially unstoppable, so that you can pay for Johnny's braces and your kids' rehabs. Hopefully not. But you can take good care of your kids' education and really provide the life for your family that your family really deserves. I know you're doing that with your 2 kids already.
Not paying for rehab, no.
No, but you're going to provide them with a great opportunity and a great financial education. I love the way you said you're going to take some time off and go abroad. I wish I'd done that with Melissa and Carissa. Trying to talk them into letting me do that with my grandkids, but I'm getting some pushback, so it's all good.
Well, you know, your daughters turned out great, so whatever you did a great job
I'm
raising
so
them.
lucky. I have talked to so many people that are struggling with their kids lately, Daniel. Honestly, I've got an incredible family, and I'll just say it's a huge blessing in life to see my kids in their late 20s now doing well. For sure, I'm really fortunate.
Well, but that's what you've done for them, right? They were investing in real estate early on, and you gave them a great education and a foundation and great foundation of values, and like that's what it's all about. It's not about giving your kids stuff, right? That's not what being financially free is about, right? It's not about giving your kids the best stuff. Like my plan legitimately is not to buy, when my kids are teenagers, I'm not going to buy them anything. You want your first car? Go get a job, start a business. Like, I'm not paying for shit.
Right.
It's not that, you know, and when you're 18, see you later.
Yeah.
But it's about giving them the right values, the right foundation, and also the right experiences, right? Like, that's what I'm looking forward to the most, is being able to give them experiences that maybe if we were struggling financially or if we're working at our W-2 jobs, we wouldn't be able to give them. That's what I'm looking forward to the most, right? Traveling the world, maybe living abroad somewhere, helping them learn another language. Those are the kinds of things that really looking forward to doing. It's not about buying them stuff, right?
That's
buying them more toys or.
You can always make more money, but you can't make more time. So the more time you give to your kids, the better off you are. Well, I want to respect your time and let you run, but everybody needs to go to rehabvaluator.com and really connect with Daniil Kleyman, and you're going to become financially unstoppable if you can get over the fear and get over that first deal and get it moving. So Daniil, thanks so much. And it's been an incredible experience knowing you for a long time and
thank you.
Working with you as well.
I appreciate that.
I'm grateful for the time that we've done that. You've helped me with a lot of stuff that you don't even know about. So thank you.
Well, that means a lot, and you've been a great friend as well, and I'm sure we've got, you know, a lot more great experiences coming up together. So, yeah. All
right. Thanks again, everybody, for listening, sharing, and comments with this. You might want to go back and listen again. I would highly recommend it. Go to rehabvaluator.com. Thanks for tuning into the Real Estate Success Podcast today, and have a great week.